Joining us now, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, who's the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. Mr. Chairman Jordan, welcome back, as always, sir. I mean, this just broke, this story.
Good to be with you.
Broke in John Solomon's Just the News, the New York Post. There have been hints to this story before, but as head of Judiciary and, of course, a member of Oversight, I mean, this could be a very serious story, sir, and I want to get your take on it.
Well, what changed was what happened 5 days before the December 9th speech that President Biden gave in Kyiv. 5 days before that, he gets a call. Well, at least Devin Archer said they called D.C. They, meaning Hunter Biden and the two guys who run Barisma, Mr. Zolochevsky and Mr. Brzezinski. They call the D.C. We assume they talked to President Biden. And then 5 days later, they tell President Biden, hey, we're under pressure. They've seized our assets in Great Britain. The prosecutor, Mr. Shokin's coming after Barisma, coming after our company. We got all this pressure. We need help. And 5 days later, Joe Biden goes, gives a speech, starts attacking the prosecutor, Mr. Shokin, ultimately says you got to get rid of him before you get American taxpayer dollars. So that's what was the sort of, I think, the catalyst for him changing the position of our government, it looks like.
I mean, you read, I don't know how much, you may have known this whole story, but as I said, it just broke on Just the News, John Solomon's work.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you read, Victoria Nuland and all these State Department big shots in the Obama administration were fine with Shokin, and they were fine with the Ukraine's then anti-corruption, and they were fine with a $1 billion loan guarantee. And suddenly Joe Biden comes in and says, no, no, no. And it just sounds like, Chairman Jordan, it sounds like this happened at the last minute, and it sounds like it was tied to son Hunter's participation in Barisma, which was under fire. Just sounds like that.
It sure, it sure does. And what I also think is interesting is it sure looks like President Trump was right about all this. You know, when the Democrats went after him with their crazy impeachment back in 2019, this was central to the whole storyline. And they said, no, 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 Shokin was bad. It was the right thing to do. And this was the policy of our State Department. This was all part of that debate then. But it looks like maybe it wasn't. One of the other things I found interesting is over the weekend, there was the story in the New York Times, story in Politico, where Hunter Biden's defense team provided all this information, and they talked about the negotiation with U.S. Attorney David Weiss. Well, one of the things that came out in those stories was in 2020, early 2020, Hunter Biden met with the impeachment lawyers, the impeachment team for the Democrats. And I'm wondering, what were they talking about? Were they talking about this? Who did he meet with? Adam Schiff? Dan Goldman? Who did Hunter Biden meet with during that impeachment process that we were involved in, of course, in defending President Trump? All this stuff starts to fit together. They were going after President Trump. It looks like they were involved with the very kind of thing they falsely accused President Trump of being involved in.
Well, I mean, you've got just one more on this Biden switcheroo. The memos show, I'm reading from the New York Post, Jim Jordan. The memos show Biden may have acted alone and, in fact, counter to U.S. policy. I guess that's one point you're making. When he told then Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko to get rid of Shokin. In other words, Biden and Nuland and all these other Obama foreign policy big shots, they said Ukraine's doing fine, Shokin's doing fine. And Biden acted alone to change the policy. So you have to ask, what was his motive? What was he doing?
Yeah.
And
it sure looks like...
Right.
No, I was going to say, Larry, I think that's the right question, and it sure looks like it was the phone call that he most likely got. We don't know who it was to. Again, Devin Archer, when he testified in his deposition 4 weeks ago, said it was a call to D.C. He didn't know who they talked to. I think they talked to Vice President Biden, and then everything changes. He goes to Ukraine, gives the speech, attacks Shokin, and then ultimately leverages that $1 billion and says you either fire him or you're not getting the taxpayer money of the American people. So I think that was the catalyst that changed the position, and maybe he did act unilaterally. I think that's kind of strange. That should be a call for the commander-in-chief himself, for President Obama, not for the vice president.
That's a great point. That's a really, you are so right. A decision like that, a considerable foreign policy financial decision has got to pass through the commander-in-chief. That's an Oval Office decision. That's not a veto decision on Air Force Two. That's a really important point. Please, go ahead.
Here's another interesting thing that happened a few years prior. When actually it would have been in 2014, Barisma, who's the wealthiest woman in Russia, she comes to D.C. She has dinner with Hunter Biden, Devon Archer, and Vice President Biden. Now, 2014, and she gives $120 million to one of the companies. She gives $3.5 million to the Bidens, to Biden and Hunter Biden and to Devon Archer. And she has this long dinner with the vice president. Now, of course, what's going on in 2014? That's when Russia came into Ukraine, took Crimea, and all kinds of folks are getting sanctioned. All kinds of Russians, all kinds of banks are getting sanctioned. We're trying to check. Did Barisma's bank get sanctioned? Did she get sanctioned? Why was she willing? The vice president spends 2 hours with her at dinner. She gives all this money to Hunter Biden and some of his business interests. We want to know if she avoided sanctions because of the contacts and the business relationship she had with the Biden family. We're trying to find out an answer to that question as well.
All right. When do you reconvene, Chairman Jordan?
We're back on that second week of September. And as Speaker McCarthy has indicated, I think we're looking closely at whether we need to move to an impeachment inquiry phase in this entire investigation. But we've got a number of issues to deal with when we get back in September. And of course, we just subpoenaed 2 FBI agents who we want to talk to, who were in this important meeting a little over about a year ago relative to the investigation of Hunter Biden. We'll see what the DOJ says.
All right, Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan. Thank you, sir.